In the barren desert of northern Egypt, in an ancient royal cemetery,
Oh, goodness me.
an astonishing discovery has been made.
It's quite a moment to be here. It's quite a weird feeling.
Egyptian archaeologists have uncovered a burial chamber that once sat beneath the pyramid. And it's still sealed with a 10-ton capstone.
This is a sort of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Whatever's inside might still be intact. That's what you dream about as an Egyptologist.
The chamber is about to be opened
This block is definitely moving now.
to reveal its secrets for the first time in almost 4,000 years.
That's not what I was expecting.
What is inside? And who was buried here?
Whatever's inside the burial chamber has the potential to tell us huge amounts.
Solving the mystery is a team of the world's leading Egyptologists.
I think of Egyptian history or any history as a big puzzle.
They will hunt for parallels in the nearby Black Pyramid.
It's not very secure.
Never before filmed, what does it reveal about our pyramid?
We come onto something really beautiful.
And what secrets will this startling new discovery reveal about one of Egypt's most mysterious ages? Dashur. 15 miles south of Cairo, it's one of Egypt's most mysterious royal graveyards. Today, only a handful of pyramids survive. But the remains of many more lie hidden beneath the desert sands. Egyptologist Dr. Chris Naunton has spent his career hunting for these lost tombs. He has come to Dashur, where Egyptian archaeologists have made a thrilling discovery.
This is a pretty exciting moment. We're in it's an amazing kind of lunar landscape. This is the Bent Pyramid, just slightly closer to us, and what's known as the Red Pyramid behind it. But we're going to a much less well-known part of the site, where something very intriguing, to say the least, has been uncovered just very recently.
This crater was the site of a large quarry, until workers stumbled upon blocks of finely cut limestone buried deep in the sand. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities began to excavate, revealing an ancient monument.
We had no suspicion at all that there was anything here up until this point, and yet just in the last few weeks and months, an entire archaeological site, stone built, has suddenly emerged out of the ground. There's some very large blocks of limestone. There's some mud brick overlying this. There's a strong possibility, straight away, I think we can say, that this is a pyramid.
It may not look much like a pyramid now, but this is just its base. A mud brick structure once stood on top, encased in brilliant white limestone.
This is the casing stone for the pyramid.
Over millennia, the valuable limestone was scavenged, leaving the mud brick core to erode.
In actual fact, it was always the subterranean elements of these monuments that are the interesting parts.
The mud brick construction, with a burial chamber hidden in the rock beneath, was a new way of building pyramids adopted in the Middle Kingdom. 500 years after the construction of the Great Pyramid, it stretched from around 2030 to 1650 BC. Before the reign of the New Kingdom boy king, Tutankhamun.
Oh, goodness me. Ha! I'm going to have to get down and have a closer look at this, I think.
Excavations have revealed a passage that once led from the entrance to deep under the pyramid.
We've got these very large blocks of limestone which are very finely cut and dressed. They're also beautifully angled to create this, this incline, which allows access from the outside down into these lower parts of the tomb via this quite beautiful staircase. It's really difficult not to imagine those priests and the other people involved in those rituals leaving the monument exactly this way, going out towards the surface, sealing the tomb, and for this passageway then never to have been entered ever again. So, the tomb continues.
The stairs lead to an underground complex, the heart of the pyramid.
It's a little bit difficult to say straight away, just looking at these stones, exactly where we are at this point. But it's difficult not to think that we're heading towards this massive chunk of granite. These are covering a cavity underneath, and that is where you might expect there to be a burial.
These huge blocks are protecting the only access to the chamber and any mummy and treasure that may be hidden inside. And unlike any other pyramid found so far, it still appears to be sealed.
There's no obvious point of entry for any robbers. There's no sign of the robbers having tried to bash a hole through the side. And of course, part of the reason for choosing very large blocks of a very heavy stone like granite or like quartzite was that they would be impossible to move. Who knows, whatever is inside might still be intact, and that would be sensational. This is a sort of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It doesn't happen that you get to a site like this and you get to uncover something which potentially has been untouched for what would be about 4,000 years.
Egypt's Ministry of Antiquity has granted permission to raise the capstone to reveal what lies within. The operation is led by the Director General of Dashur, archaeologist Adil Okasha. For Adil and his team, it's a unique find.
We discovered more than 100 pyramids in Egypt. I think there is no any pyramid that have intact burial chamber. Exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
By the time this tomb was built, the Egyptians had been burying their dead in pyramids for over 1,000 years.
The Egyptians knew by this point that they had a devil of a job trying to protect their royal burials. The whole point of this was to make this impregnable.
Weighing some 10 tons, the capstone is heavier than they thought, so they reinforce the crane.
One of the things that's really fascinating about seeing this is essentially a lot of guys, a lot of rope, and then some sleds. It's not very different from the way that the Egyptians would have done this 4,000 years ago. People have this idea that Egyptian funerary monuments are very quiet, it's all very sacred. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. When they were building monuments, it was like this.
Finally, the stone begins to move. The team are moments away from seeing inside.
Bit of an Indiana Jones moment, this, to watch the director of the site with his head underneath this massive block, which is now essentially just hanging off these chains. We've got so little evidence of intact burials of any kind, particularly not royal individuals, particularly not from this period. I mean, just to read the name, if it's there, just to read the name of whoever it was who was buried in here would be beyond exciting. Bring us, I think it would make me feel as though I was kind of close to Pharaoh, if you like. That's what you dream about as an Egyptologist.
The newly discovered pyramid is about to reveal its secrets. In Dashur, northern Egypt, archaeologists open a pyramid's sealed burial chamber. Finally, after 3 days of effort, the tomb gives up its secrets for the first time in almost 4,000 years. But what's inside is a shock.
Oh, goodness me.
Its contents are in disarray.
There's a decorated wooden box inside there, and its position suggests that it's not exactly where you would expect it to have been. There's a niche at the back. Perhaps it's fallen down, perhaps it's been disturbed. There's also a lot of debris on the ground, so it's going to be a while, I think, before we can untangle what's going on.
The archaeologists hope to be unveiling treasure. But now, there's a mystery to solve.
It seems the burial chamber was completely intact. There was no way that anybody could have got in, and everything should be still in place. And it's not. It's disturbed, and there are things missing.
It's becoming clear they've stumbled upon an ancient crime scene. Someone got here first and robbed the burial chamber. But could there still be a body? Archaeologist Adil Okasha begins a forensic investigation.
Whatever's inside the burial chamber has the potential to tell us huge amounts.
First, they shore up the 10-ton capstone and protect themselves against any ancient bacteria that may be inside the tomb. Carefully sifting through the debris on the floor, they find their first clue.
Looks like a coffin lid. Anthropoid coffin, human form.
Anthropoid coffins resemble the shape and face of their occupant. They were first adopted during the Middle Kingdom. But this coffin lid is badly damaged.
It looks like there's lots of pieces coming out. It may well be possible to reassemble more of it.
They don't see any signs of a mummy, but there are bones, so someone was buried here.
This is a long way away from an intact, preserved human body, but most pyramids belong to pharaohs. So your first assumption would be it belongs to a king.
Most intriguing is the largest item. A decorated wooden box.
The box looks like a canopic box.
Once it would have held 4 jars, each containing the mummified lungs, stomach, intestines, and liver. These are all missing. But on the side of the box, traces of hieroglyphs may be the archaeologists' best shot at solving the mystery.
If they can be read at all, there's a good chance that we might find the name of the owner. I mean, this would be crucial. Potentially, this is the key to understanding who was buried here.
It's very exciting. First impression, it's from a member of the royal family. I think we need more study to be sure exactly who is inside this pyramid.
With the artifacts removed, it's clear there are no passageways or tunnels into the burial chamber. The only way in is by lifting the capstone. And there's no evidence it's been moved since the tomb was sealed.
There are 2 questions here that we need to start trying to answer. One is who was buried here? Who was this pyramid built for? And then secondly, how is it that an apparently completely sealed, unbreached burial chamber comes to have been disturbed?
The investigation begins in Cairo. At the only wonder of the ancient world still standing today. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Built some 500 years before the newly discovered pyramid, and over twice the size.
The scale of the job is just astounding to me.
Renowned Egyptologist Dr. Mark Lerner is investigating its construction. What can it tell us about the newly discovered pyramid and how it was disturbed?
The new pyramid comes at the tail end of a great tradition of pyramid building, and the Great Pyramid of Khufu is the absolute pinnacle, and it was unsurpassed. They never achieved this magnificence and perfection in any pyramid that followed.
Like the newly discovered pyramid, it too was once encased in brilliant white limestone. Rather than a mud brick core, it's built from over 2 million blocks of stone. But like every other pyramid found, the tomb raiders got here first.
The ironic thing about a pyramid is it secures the royal burial within, and yet it advertises the royal burials right here. So why build pyramids at all? Well, we think that at this time in Egypt's history, the kings were becoming gods. They were truly merging their identity with that of the sun. Now you see this pyramid with all the casing stripped. It looks rather dark, and you see the stepstone of the core. But when it was cased with polished white limestone, the sunlight must have been truly blinding off the pyramid all during the day. And so, in effect, burying the king within the pyramid, with its highly reflective surface, they're burying the king in sunlight itself.
The ancient Egyptians believed the pharaoh had to be laid to rest with his treasures of gold to take to the afterlife. His body was preserved with salt, embalmed in oils, covered with jewels, and bound in linen. Now the challenge was protecting all these riches.
They somehow had to secure the body of the king in the darkest, deepest, dankest place that they could create.
While the newly discovered pyramid had its burial chamber underground, in the Great Pyramid it is high in its structure, reached by an ascending passage known as the Grand Gallery.
The Grand Gallery is one of the most amazing architectural marvels in the entire ancient world. It's 8 meters tall with corbelled walls that bring the sides of the chamber in to the same width above as this passage down below.
It ends in a tunnel. Like the newly discovered pyramid, it was once sealed with a stone.
The king's chamber. It's the heart of the pyramid, presumably where they buried Khufu. Nobody was meant to come in here. This was never meant to be seen once the pyramid was sealed. But the only object we have from Khufu's burial is this granite sarcophagus.
The first records of Khufu's burial chamber being opened are from over 1,000 years ago. Just like our pyramid, the mummy and treasure were missing.
It happens more than once that we come into a royal tomb, newly discovered. It seems perfectly sealed. We open it, and it's not what we expect.
At the Great Pyramid, there were no clues as to what happened to the treasure. But at the newly discovered pyramid, the thieves left a whole host of artifacts for the team to analyze. Just outside the entrance, a new clue emerges. An alabaster stone engraved with hieroglyphs. Could it provide evidence as to who was buried here? Professor Aidan Dodson, an expert in ancient texts, is examining the stone.
It contains a fairly awfully written chunk of some standard funerary inscriptions. And these inscriptions include the cartouches, which are the ovals which an Egyptian pharaoh's name is written in. And so you've got a group of 3 signs at the top there which read Ammon, 2 signs which together read Y, and then at the bottom you have 2 signs there which together read Kemal, King Amenemhet. The problem is we already have the pyramid of Amenemhet, which was found back in the 1950s, about a mile away from this pyramid. So the big question is, what on earth is this doing here?
There is one possible answer. To fool tomb raiders, sometimes pharaohs built decoy pyramids.
It's almost like in a motorcade. You don't want people to know in which car the ruler is riding. So they build different pyramids like a shell game. You don't really want people to know where the king is actually buried.
But in the newly discovered pyramid, there were bones. So someone was buried here. Shards of wood found on the tomb floor are about to reveal their identity and change the course of the investigation. In Cairo, Egyptologist Dr. Yasmin El-Shazly is investigating the mystery of a newly discovered pyramid.
I think of Egyptian history, or any history, as a big puzzle. The puzzle will never be complete, but we keep finding pieces, and these pieces add to the whole picture.
Fragments of wood found in the burial chamber have been pieced together. They form a coffin lid with a beautifully carved face.
Coffins normally had features that were similar to the owner, but idealized, because that's what they would look like for eternity. Why would you? Why would I want to look ugly for eternity?
The restoration has revealed something astonishing. This isn't a king. It is, in fact, a mystery woman.
She's wearing the Hathor wig that was very popular during the Middle Kingdom and was only worn by women. But why she was buried in that pyramid is a mystery.
The answer may lie with another object found in her grave. A chest, decorated with hieroglyphs. Could they reveal the mystery woman's name?
What's extremely important about this chest is that we know that it belonged to a princess, because here it says Satnisu, daughter of the king, and then it would be followed by the name.
So the pyramid belonged to a princess. But who is she?
The name is the most damaged area, which is very frustrating. The ancient Egyptians believed that the worst thing you could possibly do to anyone was erase their name. If we managed to find her name and say it again, then she would achieve immortality.
It's not just her name that's a mystery. Discovering a princess in a pyramid is highly unusual.
This kind of pyramid design is specific to a king. It's not what you'd expect a junior member of the royal family to be in. Normally, a princess would simply have a shaft tomb in a chamber at the bottom of it, which makes the whole thing a real mystery.
To understand more about the princess, the team must investigate the age she lived in, Egypt's Middle Kingdom. These models from the time give us a window into her world. Stretching from 2030 to 1650 BC, it's known as Egypt's Classical Age. It produced the first historical novel called The Story of Sinuhe, and new techniques of working with gold to create the finest jewelry of the ancient world. Locked in Cairo Museum, are the treasures of another Middle Kingdom princess.
We have here the crown of Princess Khnumet from Dahshur. It's made out of gold and inlaid with semi-precious stones. And here at the front, you have a branch with very, very intricate leaves and flowers. This necklace is very delicate and very intricately decorated. This, for example, is the symbol of life, the ankh. And this one, this is a very famous amulet as well. It's the Eye of Horus that helps protect the wearer. The newly discovered tomb probably contained material very similar to this, a lot of gold, which is probably why it would have been robbed a long time ago.
This jewelry survived because Princess Khnumet was buried in a hidden tomb. But our mystery princess was buried in her own personal pyramid, which suggests she could have been of great importance.
There is a parallel when a princess was buried in her own pyramid, and this was a princess who seems to have been marked out as a potential heir to the throne but died prematurely.
Could our princess have been lined up to be a pharaoh? If she had become ruler, her name would have been listed in one of the most important documents for Egyptologists, the Turin Canon.
It is a chronicle of ancient Egyptian kings from the days of the gods all the way through to 1300 BC. However, it's all a bit knocked around. An awful lot of it's missing, unfortunately. But fortunately, this is the period we're talking about here.
Aidan can find no records of a female pharaoh in this section. But an inscription at the pyramid tells us her father is Pharaoh Amené-Kamau.
Amené-Kamau is in this chunk here, which means in our terms, somewhere in the first half of the 18th century BC.
This means that Amené-Kamau, and therefore our mystery princess, lived towards the end of the Middle Kingdom, when the prosperous age was coming to an end. Famine and hunger were rife.
We are getting towards this very difficult time for Egypt. There were a series of low Niles, crop failures, and that has tended in Egyptian history to bring about turmoil of other kinds. In these circumstances, you can imagine people taking what opportunities they could. When you have burials with precious objects, precious metals, tomb robbery would become perhaps very appealing for some people.
Even torture and execution wasn't enough deterrent. So the newly discovered pyramid was built with the tightest security of the age. But how did thieves crack it? In Dahshur, northern Egypt, Dr. Chris Naunton is investigating how thieves breached the security of a newly discovered pyramid.
This is a bit of a surprise, but very intriguing. I'm just going to go in here.
He's examining two trenches on either side of the burial chamber.
Every archaeologist's friend, a mobile phone with a torch on it. Well, you might think that this would be an obvious entry point for a potential robber, because this leads directly to the burial chamber. But if anybody did try and come in this way, they didn't get anywhere, because there's a very solid wall of granite right in front of me. My guess is that these may have been to do with lowering the large granite stones in. These were lowered into place by this sand hydraulics.
Sand hydraulics was the ultimate ancient locking device. First, they pushed the 10-ton stone onto wooden props, which sat in stone chimneys filled with sand. To seal the tomb, they removed plugs at the bottom,
which has the effect of lowering the final stone into place, perfectly in position, in such a way as for it to be impossible for it to then be raised up again. So there's no way that any robber would have taken the lid off, as it were, taken what they wanted, and then put it back in place nicely, you know, as if to say, you know, well, nothing to see here.
So how can it be that the burial came to be violated?
The answer could lie just a mile away at the Black Pyramid. Its construction resembles that of the Princess's Pyramid, so may hold clues to how it was looted. Once it was clad with limestone, but that's long gone, leaving its mud brick core to erode.
Although today the pyramid is this standing black tower surrounded by a slump of disintegrated mud brick, the substructure, the interior, is truly amazing.
Underground lies the most complex labyrinth of the age. But in the troubled late Middle Kingdom, even this was wrong. How the thieves got in will help solve the mystery of the newly discovered pyramid.
So, Dr. Ayman,
Hello, Doctor.
we meet again, smile
Yeah,
here.
nice to meet you again. Yeah.
Dr. Mark Lerner has special permission to explore it.
So, Dr. Ayman, it's okay to go in?
Yes, please, but take care of the humidity, and if you feel tired, just get a rest.
Take a rest. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
See
much.
you.
I will be
Waiting
back.
for you here.
I will be back, I hope.
I hope.
Thank you.
This is the first time cameras have ever been allowed inside. Straight away, it's clear that the stone staircase and limestone passages echo those at the newly discovered Princess's Pyramid. But what other clues to our mystery lie within?
So I have to tell you, it's the first time I've been down here in 36 years. It's so humid. The humidity and the warmth here is astounding.
The labyrinth was built for the pharaoh Amenemhet III and his queens in the 19th century BC.
Well, we have a number of choices. There's a king section and there's a queen section. So I'm going to try to figure out what is the right turn to get into the king section.
King Amenemhet's wing is situated to the north of the pyramid. A bewildering system of passageways and dead ends.
He wants to make it complicated, to confuse any would-be robbers, and to set them off false trails, to take them to dead ends, to snare them in deep shafts. They're trying any number of ways to secure the king's royal burial.
But the complexity of the underground labyrinth came at a price.
Everywhere you can see the signs of structural failure. You can see where stones are literally buckling out. You're looking at cracks developing as you're working, like these, you know, down the ceiling. It must have truly terrified the workers. The burial chamber of the king, I think, is our next left turn. Maybe, if I'm right. So back here, entirely encased in fine white limestone, this beautiful granite sarcophagus. Here, Amenemhet would have been buried. At the northern end of the sarcophagus, his two eyes. When he was laid out as a mummy, his two eyes could look out towards the east, the direction of the rising sun, forever.
To the west of the pyramid are the burial chambers of Amenemhet's two queens, with their treasures hidden separately in the most remote part of the labyrinth.
This passage is all clay. It's all what they call tuffla. It's not very secure. All this wood, the back layer of wood is ancient. It's cedar from Lebanon to ensure it doesn't collapse.
When the pyramid was first explored in the 1970s, the passages were filled with massive blocks of stone. This prevented the corridors from collapsing and once created an impenetrable barrier to the Queen's most precious possessions.
At the end of this narrow corridor, we come on to something really beautiful. Tucked away in another nicely cased chamber, cased again with beautiful limestone, a polished alabaster box.
Like the Mystery Princess's pyramid, the canopic chest is the only treasure that remains. Hers was made out of wood. This one for a queen is made from the finest alabaster.
So beautiful, the alabaster, lustrous, that when you put a light in, shines through.
The complex maze, empty tombs and passages blocked with stones should have made this pyramid impenetrable. Yet it was broken into. So why didn't the security measures stop thieves getting to the royal gold?
One of the reasons it didn't, it looks like the pyramids were robbed very soon after they were closed, and therefore it would have been by those who actually knew the mechanisms, the ways underneath and into the pyramid. And so it's a saying that its guard is its thief.
Will this final clue help solve the mystery of how the newly discovered pyramid was raided? Could this be an inside job? A team of archaeologists have been investigating the theft of treasure from a newly discovered pyramid. Dr. Chris Naunton is piecing together all the evidence to solve the ancient mystery. How was the pyramid's sealed burial chamber robbed?
There was no way into that burial chamber. There's no evidence of any point of entry. So there's no evidence that robbers got in. But the blocking stone was lifted, and inside it's disturbed, and there are things missing.
There was no mummy, but there were bones. So someone was buried here. And there were clues to the owner's identity.
Parts of the coffin of a woman wearing the Hathor wig. We have a canopic chest, a series of inscriptions, enough to say that we have the daughter of a king, and a fragment of text was recovered, gave us the name of Pharaoh Amenemhat.
The princess lived 3,700 years ago, a period of turmoil and unrest. Having explored every way in which her grave could have been robbed, Chris is left with just a single theory.
There is one possibility, which is that actually the robbery occurred before that final blocking stone came down. So we can perhaps imagine that the mummy of our princess is ready, high-ranking priests would be involved, the rituals are performed, and then the final act would be to inter the mummy itself inside the tomb. If there was a robbery at this point, it was performed with the knowledge, at least, of some of those people who were involved in the ceremony.
In these troubled times, even the most upstanding and reverent priest could be turned to crime.
I almost don't want to think about that, because it just seems like too much of a crime against, the right way of doing things for the Egyptians. But we are left with no other explanation.
They took her treasures, smashed open her coffin, and even defiled her mummy to get at the precious jewelry on her body before sealing the tomb for eternity.
The final great irony here is that the system of sand hydraulics, which was intended to prevent robbers from getting in, would also have prevented the burial from being inspected. This was the perfect crime. And we only, thousands of years later, come upon this crime scene. It's only at this point anybody realizes, oh goodness, the tomb's been robbed.
The ancient Egyptians buried pharaohs in pyramids for over 1,000 years. But the princess's tomb was one of the very last royal pyramids to be built. As the turmoil of the Middle Kingdom ended and the New Kingdom began, this great tradition drew to a close. From now on, pharaohs would be buried 400 miles south of Cairo, in the hidden Valley of the Kings.
You didn't have this tradition of every king building a massive pyramid. Instead, the mountain of Thebes itself was the pyramid for the New Kingdom royal tombs, all of which penetrated the bedrock at the base of a kind of natural pyramid called Merit Seeger, the lover of silence.
Although most of these tombs were also ransacked, in 1922, the burial chamber of the pharaoh Tutankhamun was discovered, laden with treasures of gold. At last, the tomb raiders had been thwarted. In Dashur, the pyramids were left to crumble, and the mystery princess's name was lost. For the ancient Egyptians, this was the worst thing that could happen.
If your name is gone and nobody remembers it and it's never said again and it's erased from monuments, it's like you've never existed.
The team are trying one more time to read the name on her canopic chest.
Here, neat. The goddess neat.
Using the latest imaging techniques, Adil Okasha deciphers the badly damaged hieroglyphs to reveal her name for the first time in almost 4,000 years.
This is the title, Sabt Nisut. It means the daughter of the king, the princess. And the name, it Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut.
This is a revelation. There are no records of this newly discovered Princess Hatshepsut. Yet, she was important enough to have been buried in her own pyramid.
When I look at her, I'm imagining the woman who is buried in this coffin, and it's amazing.
Now we can say her name. Princess Hatshepsut has finally achieved immortality.